Google search vegan seafood and click news and see that vegan seafood is literally going to be the next big thing. Companies are racing to create better tuna and salmon replicas, and they're going wild doing it. I mean, some of these just raised $8 million to make vegan seafood. Now, if you look through a lot of this news, a lot of these people are all using the same thing. They all say they're making their seafood out of algae. Now that is, as we know, alginate. When I made my vegan shrimp just a few weeks ago, I used an alginate along with calcium to create a very lifelike, shrimp-like texture. Now, alginate, this alginate powder, essentially this is just a powdered version of the gooey stuff that's on the outside of seaweed. When that gooey stuff reacts with calcium, it firms up. It's really kind of wild what you could do with it. A lot of these companies also like to tout their other ingredients because it makes it more unique, and a lot of them are also using konjac gum. Now, konjac is a tuberous, it's like a potato, but its gum can firm up to make like a gelatin, a very firm gelatin. Now, not that long ago, I made a konjac steak and it was incredible, but while I was making that steak, I noticed that its smell, its texture, the way it all felt like a raw piece of fish. But it was really just more solid, so we want to figure out ways to make structure. Now, today I'm only going to test for texture and taste. I want to nail the taste down. I want to get the taste pretty good. I think it's going to be pretty simple, but I also want to get the texture pretty good. I'm going to mess with the color in the future, but for now, let's see if we can make a better raw tuna, raw salmon, at home, plant-based, and we're not going to have to raise $8 million to do it. So the three of these combined are going to give us a very nice texture, very nice look to them, and a very nice smell, a very nice presence, fishy smell. So let's get moving. It's going to be pretty easy. These sound like some pretty complicated ingredients, but they're fairly simple to work with. The only one that I do want to give some caution, and it says on the back, the calcium hydroxide. This is a very caustic ingredient, meaning that when it reacts with water, it reacts rapidly. So if this raw in powder form touches wet skin, it can cause burns. So if you're using this, just be very cautious. Make sure you're an adult. That's all I have to say. So first, we're gonna mix all of the dry ingredients, all of the powders. We're gonna do everything by weight. It's gonna make it easier in the end, because then you can just double and triple. So we're gonna do 20 grams of konjac gum, 5 grams of alginate, 2 grams of sea salt, 1 gram of the kelp powder, and then 1 gram of paprika. Now at this point, I'm just gonna mix all of these dry ingredients together, just whisk them together so that way they're completely, fully combined. So now we have 700 milliliters of about 125 degree water, and we're gonna mix it very rapidly for about 2 minutes. And when I'm whisking, I'm gonna whisk very heavy because otherwise the alginate will not combine properly. Normally I'd suggest that you mix alginate in a blender, but in this case, because of the konjac gum, we're not gonna do that because that konjac you're gonna see is gonna get very gummy very fast. That's why we're gonna do it by hand. Okay, so what I feared would happen actually happened, and the alginate didn't really mix in that well, but you can see how this got incredibly gummy-like. I mean, it's very much like a gelatin. What I'm gonna do quickly while this is still warm, I wanna make sure this stays warm. I'm gonna throw my hand beater on, see if I can whip this up real quick and see if I can get that alginate mixed in a little bit better. Okay, so that worked fairly well. So now we're gonna get our calcium mixture. Now I know I said originally mix all of the dry ingredients. We're leaving the calcium till the end because the calcium is what's gonna firm this up really fast. So I'm gonna prepare 2 grams of calcium. And again, like I said, be careful. Don't breathe that there's like a little foam that came up. Then we're gonna measure out 2 grams of calcium. Now to mix in the calcium hydroxide, we're gonna need an additional 50 milliliters of water. And then quickly, I'm just gonna add a few drops of agave, not much. And same thing, about half of a teaspoon of olive oil. Now I know that olive oil is not gonna mix really well with this. That's okay. We just want it to be incorporated in the mixture because some fish is a little fatty. And then we're gonna take our 2 grams of calcium hydroxide, make sure everything is mixed very well and really incorporated. And then I'm gonna use my spatula. I'm gonna give this a little hole to kind of mix in. If you overmix this, it's gonna break apart too much, so you wanna just get it mixed in because this is gonna work pretty quick. And you do need to just kind of knead this in, and it immediately starts smelling like fish, which is really wild. Now from here, we're just gonna wanna tightly fit it into a container. Now I'm just gonna use a little bit of force to kind of get it into this container because I want it to be pretty smooth. don't know if you've ever done that, but that helps kind of move a product all the way through. Whew. So I'm gonna clean all this up. We're gonna let this sit for about an hour. The longer the calcium sits with the alginate, the longer the calcium sits with the konjac, it's gonna really firm this up and make it one big gelled thing. So this is gonna work out. Be back in an hour. Okay, so at this point, this guy has sat, it's rested. You can see the texture through it. It's not as smooth as I would like, I'll be honest. So I'm just gonna use my piece of parchment paper that I have here. And we're gonna just flip this over. Perfect. So I think this is a really good starting point for a really good piece of sushi fish at home. That's not gonna cost $8 million. But the next step is to boil this. We're gonna put this in the boiling water for 30 minutes. Okay, so I boiled it for about 30 minutes. I flipped it over partway through, and then I moved it into a bowl of cold water. I added some ice to it because I really wanted to get this cold. Now, for the most part, after sitting in the cold water, it's ready to go. I will say this thing feels crazy. It is extremely fleshy feeling, which I know is probably gross, but it is wild. Just gonna give it a quick pat down to get any water or moisture that's on the top. We're gonna give it a flip over. Now, like I said, I really just think that this texture can really improve the more we mess with it. I'm gonna give a big chunk off the end to get like a nice clean starting point. But wow, just wow. The inside of this is so impressive. Oh my gosh. Now, I will say that konjac is known as a choking hazard. So if you try this at home, don't be by yourself. Make sure you have somebody around you. The reason why is because konjac doesn't really dissolve in your mouth like when you're chewing it. So it is known as a choking hazard. I just want to put that warning out there. Be careful. Look at that. Oh, that is so creepy. Oh my gosh, that is incredibly wild. Oh my gosh, you could totally mistake that for fish. As somebody who is a pescatarian for a long time, I will say that that is 100% texture is dead on. Dead on, that texture is 100%. And it's mild enough and buttery enough to really be that type of like, I would say it's closer to a salmon texture. These companies are spending $8 million and $1 billion or $100 million, whatever they're doing. Wow, because I just nailed it at home. The next thing is to get rid of the flakes and then add the stripes to make it really like lifelike like a salmon. You could put that in sushi right now and no one would know.